Over the last few years, I found myself getting more and more invested in a mind bending question. Is it possible that our world is actually a virtual simulation? To find out, I recently did a deep dive into the academic literature to see exactly who believes this and why. And it turns out this isn't just a sci fi meme. Aside from Elon Musk's famous remark that the odds we are in base reality is 1 in billions, there are actually serious high level experts who believe this is our reality. Now, a quick disclaimer before we dive any deeper. This is my own initial research into the topic. And even though I've uncovered a lot, it's by no means exhaustive. To be completely honest, making this video is a huge challenge for me because philosophical presentations are definitely not my usual strength. Because I'm covering so much ground, this is gonna be a pretty long video. If you start to find it a bit heavy or boring, go ahead and save it to your playlist so you can come back and watch it later in chunks. But for those ready for the deep dive, let's look at one of those serious experts I mentioned, Dr. Roman Yampolsky. He's a prominent computer scientist and AI safety researcher. His argument is built on pure first principles. If humanity or future superintelligence eventually creates human-level AI and hyper-realistic virtual reality, and that technology becomes cheap and affordable, someone's gonna run billions of simulations because those virtual worlds would vastly now outnumber the one real world. Statistically, it is highly probable that you and I are living inside one of those simulations right now. But as modern as the AI argument sounds, this entire idea didn't start with computers. The ultimate foundation for this theory is deeply philosophical, and it was kickstarted by an Oxford philosopher named Nick Bostrom back in 2003. Bostrom didn't just guess that the world is a simulation. He used logic to trap us in a three-way choice. He argued that as a civilization advances, it will inevitably reach a post-human stage with near-infinite computing power. According to Bostrom, mathematically, at least one of these three statements must be true. Number one is extinction. He says we might just wipe ourselves out before we ever get the technology to build a virtual universe. Number two is a lack of interest. Maybe future civilizations get the technology, but they choose not to run these simulations. Maybe they find it boring or they decide it's unethical to program a virtual world where simulated people feel real pain. Number three is that we're in a simulation right now. Here's why Bostrom's argument is so powerful. He says, if you believe humanity will survive, and you believe we will use this technology to run virtual worlds, then number one and number two are false. That leaves us with number three. If there are billions of simulated worlds running, but only one original biological world, what are the odds that you're the lucky one in the real reality? Statistically, it's almost zero. You're almost certainly lines of code. So that is the philosophical math behind it. But philosophy is just step one. Next, we have to look at the physical clues built into our universe, and we can break them down into two main ideas, the video game theory and the dream theory. Part 1, the universe as a video game. First, let's look at the tech angle. In his book, The Simulation Hypothesis, MIT computer scientist and video game designer Wisman Verk argues that our physical world isn't solid at all. Instead, it behaves exactly like a massive online video game. Think about how games have evolved from basic pixel games to photorealistic virtual realities. Work shows that as we master AI and quantum computing, we will eventually build virtual worlds that feel completely indistinguishable from real life. Work points out that the biggest mysteries in modern physics actually make perfect sense if we are inside a video game engine. For example, in quantum physics, subatomic particles exist in a fuzzy, uncertain state until a scientist observes them. Proponents of simulation theory argue that this is just how video games save memory. A game engine doesn't render the entire map at once, it only renders the specific room your character is looking at. Even ancient traditions stumbled onto this long before computers. Plato famously described humanity as living in a cave, looking only at shadows of the real world. In Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, the core philosophy is that our physical world is an illusion called Maya, a giant dream world where we have multiple lives, playing different characters, gaining experience, and leveling up after completing challenges. It sounds exactly like a video game. But what if there's no alien computer or hacker running this game? What if the universe is running itself? In a 2020 paper, scientists Clay Irvin, Marcelo Amaro, and David Chester introduced an alternative called the self-simulation hypothesis. They argue that imagining an outside computer just pushes the question back: who built the outside computer's universe? To fix this, they suggest removing the outside universe entirely. Instead of a machine, they argue that the universe is a strange loop, a grand mental self simulation. To understand this, imagine you're having a vivid dream. The dream feels completely real. Gravity pulls you down and everything looks correct. Who created that dream? You did, and you're also inside it. The self simulation hypothesis says the universe works exactly like that, but on a cosmic scale. Instead of physical matter accidentally producing consciousness, these researchers argue that consciousness is the foundation of everything. There's one single universal mind thinking the entire universe into existence. And we humans are like smaller minds embedded inside it. We're like the universe way of thinking in more detail, acting like neurons in the brain. And if you ask, well, who started the thinking? Their answer is bold. Nobody started it. Because time itself is an illusion. The whole simulation, past, present, and future, exists simultaneously like a finished novel sitting on a shelf. There is no moment where the book began. It just simply is. So, why do we believe it? Why are people so obsessed with this idea right now? The answer lies in modern psychology and how our everyday technology is changing our brains. Back in 1981, French philosopher John argued that modern society has replaced actual reality with symbols, media, and screens, a state he called hyperreality. Sometimes a photo or digital space feels more real and important to us than the physical world itself. But what happens when the virtual world actually starts feeling completely real to our senses? To find out, Harvard's researcher Pattis published a brilliant study in 2024. He wanted to test how virtual reality technology changes our instincts about what is real. He studied a psychological concept called presence, which is that powerful feeling of being there inside a virtual world. He discovered that when people experienced high presence in VR, it triggered a massive shift in their worldview. It moved them away from realism, the belief that the physical world is the only solid reality. Instead, it pushed them toward subjective idealism, the idea that reality is constructed by the mind. Essentially, by stepping into simulated worlds of our own creation, we are training our brains to believe that our everyday world could easily be a simulation too. But before you have an existential crisis, there are some massive scientific counterarguments that might just prove our world is real after all. A study by the same scientists from quantum gravity research, Irwin, Amaro, and Chester, looked at this from space. Think about what happens when too many players join a video game server at once, or when there are too many explosions on the screen. The game starts to lag, frames drop, and the graphics glitch because the computer's processor gets overwhelmed. They argue that if our universe were a simulation, the exact same thing should happen in deep space during massive high energy events like exploding stars. The simulator's computer would experience massive strain, leaving behind digital glitches or lags that our telescopes could easily detect. But when we look out at the universe, the fix is perfectly smooth. There's no buffering or no lag. The the definitive reality check comes from a 2025 paper by astrophysicist Franco Vazza at the University of Bologna. His core argument is simple. information is physical. You cannot process or store digital data for free. Every single computational step requires real energy. This is an unbendable law of physics. Vezin ran the math on what it would take to simulate our reality, and the numbers are completely impossible. To simulate the entire universe would require more energy than actually exists in the entire universe. And to simulate just planet Earth at full resolution, the computer would need to burn through an entire galaxy's worth of energy every few months. And to simulate Earth at a low resolution, even if the simulator cuts corners and only renders the bare minimum of what humans can detect, the processing speed is still impossible. He concluded that the only scenario physics cannot fully disprove is the purely selfish one, that the simulation is only rendering your individual brain right now, and everything else you see is a hallucination. But as he points out, this isn't a new tech theory. Ultimately, whether we're made of biological cells or digital bits, the result is the same. Real or virtual, your life, your choices, and your experiences matter. So thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you found out tomorrow this was a simulation. Would you even care?